Back here tonight, time now for News Talk. We're joined by Marc Molinaro, the gubernatorial candidate for governor. Of course, obviously, we're talking about governor. He's also the Dutchess County executive, Republican candidate. Let's talk more about all of this. You're here in Utica, New York, upstate New York. I know there's been a lot of talk about can you or will you put a lot of emphasis on upstate New York. You've already said that that's an important thing for you. So what will you do for Utica?
Yeah, listen, we have to start by cutting property taxes. No matter where you are in the state of New York, New Yorkers know that this governor has allowed New York to be the highest tax state in the nation. We shoulder more of a tax burden than any people in America, and because of it, we're forcing so many New Yorkers out of state, and upstate New York sees it every day. So small businesses, farmers, and individuals really moving to other parts of the country because there's a lack of opportunity and there's a high cost of living. So our focus, my focus, is definitely going to be on driving down property taxes and making it more affordable for New Yorkers, but really working with local communities, not from a top-down approach, but working at the street level to grow job opportunities and to create really the environment where small and medium-sized businesses can grow again.
You mentioned top-down, so I'm going to go right to Nano Utica. And thus far, it hasn't worked out the way I think the original plans, the governor's original plans were. What would be your remedy at this situation? It's there. So, I mean, knowing that it is there, there is a structure there, it's ready to go. What would you do with it now? Yeah, listen, we can't pull the plug. So at the end of the day, we've got to make the environment easier for businesses to locate and to grow. So that means, again, reducing cost. It means reducing some degree of regulation and working with community leaders to identify how we attract the right businesses for the right locations. And that's whether it's here or any place else in the state of New York. But again, because the governor makes the announcement from Albany, you know, that's not economic development. You've got to work with local leaders, business leaders, chambers of commerce and others to grow those opportunities at the local level. 70% of new jobs come from existing businesses. So where's the biggest bang for our buck? Really working with those businesses struggling every day in New York and trying to create the environment where they can grow. A lot of people, I think, would agree that there is corruption in Albany. You mentioned Albany. What would be the first thing you would do?
And
fix that?
Listen, we need to appreciate the fact that this governor has had 7 or 8 of his closest associates, his own chief of staff, found guilty of federal corruption charges. Any place else in America with that kind of problem, a governor would be forced out of office. Sadly, it's just another day in Albany in New York. And pay to play. So on day one, I will demand that we no longer hand out checks to businesses. If you're doing business with the state of New York, you can't continue to contribute to politicians. We'll create an actual moral commission to go after ethics issues and corruption no matter where it is. I'm going to force the state legislature to vote on a universal code of ethics and create an independent ethics commission to really enforce that law, and a vote up or down on term limits.
So what is your approach then, working with these lawmakers to find common ground? What would be your number one approach?
Listen, I've done this much of my adult life. I believe in bringing people together. You start by respecting. I mean, this governor dismisses those people he disagrees with. If you don't necessarily toe his line, he divorces you. He no longer has as much. He doesn't want to work with you any longer. So my goal is really to tell people, listen, if you're honest and earnest about trying to solve a problem, then you deserve a seat at the table. Remember, it was only 4 years ago. This governor said, if you're right of center, you've got no place in New York. My opinion is, if you're left of center, you have every place in New York. I want people to work together. I've done this as a county executive. I've done it as a village mayor, and I'll do it as governor.
Broadband in rural counties up here. I mean, it is an issue up here trying to get that infrastructure into those rural counties. What would be your plan to fix that, to make that happen for everyone?
Well,
and is it important that everyone has it?
Yes. Listen, you know, hundreds of years ago, they built communities around the river. Then it was around rail lines, and then it was around interstates. And now we need that technology certainly to grow job opportunities and really to keep people connected. So that means, you know, listen, we do have to incentivize. We do have to drive down some regulation, but we ought to be working and partnering with the private sector to make it happen. There are some other technologies that I think we can employ where, at least in the short term, we can create a universal broadband, universal high-speed internet access in a more affordable way.
Our Republican county executive is really big on shared services, working with all of the different towns and municipalities in Oneida County, for example, to share services in some form or fashion. Where are you on shared services? Is that an important aspect of your governance?
Listen, I was for shared services before it was popular. popular.
Okay.
No, I mean to say that as a village mayor years ago, we believed in it. Dutchess County has been a leader in shared services. I know Tony Pacenti in this county has done a lot of work in shared services. But here's again, the governor has a top-down approach. My position is say to community leaders, I respect you, let's figure out ways to consolidate and share, and as you create savings, you don't necessarily get to keep the money. It's got to go back as real property tax relief. Government shouldn't just absorb the dollars. And there's real ways to get economies of scale and to deregulate. But here's an important fact. New York forces more state spending onto local property taxpayers than any state in the country, which means property taxes are unusually and unnecessarily high. So if communities are working together to drive down cost, the state has to drive down the mandated expenditures too. Rather than mandating things, let's work toward outcomes, and let's create the most efficient way to do it. And every dollar we save goes back to property tax relief.
Now, our county executive here has worked very closely with our governor, our Democratic governor. Are you going to work closely with our county executive?
Absolutely. I'll work closely with anyone who is honest and earnest about serving. Listen, I actually worked okay with the governor, but I got tired of being a prop in his theater productions, frankly. I mean, sooner or later, you got to acknowledge what we've been dealing with. An individual who, if you disagree, they just dismiss you. Talk about shared services. When supervisors and mayors across the state said, hey, listen, we'd like to work with you, Governor, but don't blame us for property taxes, he said they were full of baloney. That's a quote. So, I mean, I think you start by respecting people, and I'll work with Republicans and Democrats just as I have every day of my adult life. I was first elected village mayor of Tivoli, New York, where you don't run on party affiliation. I know the value of bringing people together to solve problems.
What about working with our president?
Yeah, well, listen, I call balls and strikes. So my position is that the federal government needs to invest in infrastructure, needs to invest in our cities. We've seen the deterioration of housing stock. We've seen unsafe communities. The federal government needs to be a part of that. The federal government needs to invest in special education as well. There are moments that he will say things and do things that are in the best interest of New York. I'll say so. And when he doesn't, I'll say that too. Just a few
And he has said
so.
that New Yorkers perhaps should pick up and move where it's easier to do business and live, perhaps.
Well, he doesn't have to say that. They're already doing it. New York leads the nation in out-migration. But he did say just a few days ago that New Yorkers shoulder the highest burden of property taxation, and it's because of Andrew Cuomo. I call that one a strike right down the middle.
What has the governor done well?
Yeah. Well, he certainly fundraises pretty well, and he's...
What has he done well in governing our state?
Listen, there are efficiencies, and certainly he's had to lead during some difficult economic times, but I'm sorry. What we've seen after 8 years now is a state that's very close to an $18 billion budget deficit. We've seen the highest taxation in the nation. You know, I think at the end of the day, there's a reason most governors only serve 8 years. I think 8 is enough. I've said that I'd hold myself to 2 4-year terms, and I think, in fact, we should vote up or down on 2 4-year terms.
All right. Marc Molinaro, thank
Thanks.
you so much for coming on the program.
Thanks.
Molinaro is the Republican in the race. You also have the Democratic primary between incumbent Andrew Cuomo and Cynthia Nixon. Stephanie Miner running on the Independence line, Larry Sharp, Libertarian, and on the Green Party line, Howie Hawkins.